I think good. Do we have quorum, so should I go?
Give the public probably about a minute or two.
Okay.
And for the Zoom meeting and then we can start that.
I don't know. But I haven't heard anything.
Sounds good. But doesn't count though.
I'm gonna use this.
For the park master plan. Yeah, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Oh, yeah. Of course. Okay, I would like to call this meeting to order. All right, I would like to call this meeting to order. David, can we get a roll call?
Yes, Chair. Chair Judge,
Thank you.
Vice Chair Hornbrook,
Present.
Commissioner McInerney,
Present.
Commissioner Moon,
Present.
and Commissioner Burr is not in at this time.
Excellent. Okay. We are there any oral communications from the public? That is correct. Thank you, Jim. I'm going to remind you that every member of the public has 3 minutes to speak, so you have 3 minutes. So
State your
please,
name. Yeah.
and please state your name at the beginning of your comments.
Jim Wood, I'm co-founder of Green Team, and I know everyone but Michael. Nice to meet you, Michael. And I was a former voting commissioner. But I'm here just to request that you put Green Team on your agenda for January. We'd like to bring you up to date on what we've been doing. And basically, it's going to be more of the same. We're going to do the same things, but we're going to hopefully do them better. And when I say the same things, I just want to quickly review. We take care of the median out in front and the butterfly garden. We just last Thursday planted the strand of poppies on Old Rail Trail along Richardson Bay. We also take care of Trestle Trail and the Wildflower Meadow. And we work to have Old Rail Trail and Blackie's pasture as weed-free as possible. In a way, we are an auxiliary to the Department of Public Works. And I really want to impress upon you that they really cooperate with us, and it's just working beautifully now. There have been some bumps in the road in the past, but couldn't be better now. We make a nice pile of weeds and they pick them up regularly, and everything goes smoothly. And we also do occasional projects along Tiburon Boulevard. When we did a project at the freeway interchange, the Cloverleaf, we cleaned that up. Last year, our big project was Blackie's gravesite. It's going well. This year, our project, and I want to introduce you to it, and so you can study it, is to create a pergola, like an arbor, above the one picnic table that's at the end of Trestle Trail. And I have pictures of it that I'll leave with you. It hasn't been used that much, and a lot of it could be they are really exposed to the sun and wind and noise. And so that would be our big project for the coming year. Other than that, nothing particularly new. We're just doing really, we have probably 6 to 8 volunteers who show up regularly every Tuesday and Thursday morning. And we work for 3 hours. Our next project, we're going to donate a project to clean up, detail out. We're gardeners. Basically, we're gardeners to clean up St. Hilary's, the chapel, the landscaping there. So I'll leave you with this. It shows a picture of what a pergola is. It shows where we'd like to install it. And it shows our budget for 2024. Michael, we are funded to a big extent by the Tiburon Peninsula Foundation, Belvedere Community Foundation, and we raise money quite a bit on our own. We have a budget each year of $25,000, and it goes mostly to labor. That's it. I'll do with it 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. David, are we allowed to take commissioner comments or responses or?
Not on this, but we'll come back in January as an
Okay.
action item that we can discuss and talk about.
Great.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Jim. And thank you for the work of the green team. Much appreciated.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a staff report.
No, so next we are at commissioner and staff briefings. If there's any commissioner staff briefings.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. That's not here. Sorry.
Or online comments, things not on the agenda.
None, yeah.
Okay, well, commissioner and staff briefings, I do have a briefing. One is a huge heartfelt gratitude to Isaac Nickfar, who left the commission to take his seat on the town council. We're really happy to see that, and we wanted to thank Isaac for all of his years of service on the Parks, Open Space and Trails Commission. Of course, he left an open seat here on post, and the Tiburon Town Council approved Michael Moon, who is our newest commissioner, to fill that seat. I wanted to welcome you, Michael, on behalf of Post. Watch your interview online. It was fantastic, and I'm so thrilled you're part of this group. So thank you in advance for all of your service for this community. It really means a lot. We're really looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Can Michael share anything? Any remarks from Michael?
Sure.
Okay, if you care to share, share anything for viewers or the commission, you're welcome to speak.
Sure, I'll just keep it short. I'm just excited to be here. Really excited about what Post has in store for it over the next 6 to 12 months. Hope to be a big part of that, and looking forward to helping the community just really looking forward to working with you guys.
We are very excited. So thank you so much. Michael's been a resident of Tiburon for 10 years and comes to this from a career in private equity, and we're really grateful to have your service. So I think that's it for me.
Yes, we can now move on to the minutes.
Okay, so would like to move to approve the minutes from the meeting of September 28th.
Second.
I'll take roll call. Chair Judge,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hornbook,
Approved.
Commissioner McInerney,
Yes.
and Commissioner Burr absent, and Commissioner Moon was not on post for that, so motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we are going to move to the presentation items. We have the firm WRT that is here to present an update on what they've learned through this deep process of public engagement to understand what the residents of Tiburon want and hope to see in their parks, open space, and trails. Do we have folks from WRT here to present?
Yes.
Excellent. So we'll just move to you to share your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do have Peter Winch and Olivia Grenzenbach from WRT, and they will start the presentation, and we have a presentation that we're going to share on the screen as well.
Sure, I just have a quick question in terms of order is, or maybe David could answer it. Is they're going to give a presentation? Are there questions from the community and then questions from us, or what's the order? So everybody understands the process. Thank you.
Yes, Vice Chair Hornbrook. So they will have give their presentation, and then the commission will ask their questions, and then we'll open it up for public comment, and then we'll come back to the commission for discussion and provide feedback to both WRT and to staff.
Thank you. Helpful.
Just to clarify, we should hold off on our questions until they finish their presentation, or can we ask questions as they go?
What do you prefer?
Whatever you prefer is good.
We usually do it that we let them get through the presentation, and then we sort of take turns asking the commissioner questions, if that seems doable, and then we'll go to the public comments, and then we can come back to the next item.
Okay, off we go. Peter Winch with WRT, and I'm joined by Olivia Grenzenbach, who's working with me closely on this project. We have other folks in the office who have also been involved, and you'll see a little bit more about our team. We are so grateful to be working with you and being able to explore the parks and open spaces in Tiburon and begin to understand what the community desires are. And so today, I hope, is interesting and informative for you. And if there are things that you wanted to hear but didn't, please ask those questions. So go ahead and move forward. We will be talking about community engagement and what we've learned, but that's dessert. We're actually going to start with some of the just presenting in hopefully pretty succinctly other aspects of our analysis. So understanding the demographics and what that means for recreation, looking at the park system geographically, sharing the findings of our park by park and facility by facility assessment and our assessment of programming at the ranch. And then we'll get to the community input. So I know that that's perhaps the most important and interesting thing, but I think the rest of it is also important context for the plan. So go ahead. So quick reminder, why are we doing a system-wide parks and open space and recreation plan? This is a great opportunity for Tiburon to look holistically at the whole geography of the peninsula and understand what the existing network of parks and open spaces and recreation sites is. and to understand community priorities overall. So stepping back from the discussions around individual sites for a moment, for a year, and looking at the system as a whole in order to guide good decision-making in those at each individual site that makes sense in an overall context. We are leading a team that also includes some other firms that are providing specific expertise. David Ross from Mac5 has conducted building assessments and will be working with us to shape project improvement recommendations and cost estimates. Pros Consulting, they are a frequent partner of WRT in this kind of work, and they bring a deep understanding of what it means to run a successful parks and recreation system, sort of from the operations side. ETC, they administered our statistically valid survey, and the results of that we will share today. And then Christine O'Rourke, she is just a great partner. She's we worked with her on the general plan. Some of you may be familiar with her from the general plan update, and just helps make sure that that continuity is there in our project. We started this effort in April. We met with the post subcommittee and kicked off the project. During the summer, we did community engagement. We did these pop-up events. We met with stakeholders, community partners, and we were, immersed in the analysis that we're going to present now. We conducted the statistically valid survey that was mostly in August and September. In September, there were a pair of community workshops as well as a community walking tour. And now here we are presenting to you first, but then we're going to go to the ranch board because they're also a stakeholder in this process, and then go to town council so that they're updated on our progress. We are going to be then pivoting and beginning to formulate recommendations, which are the basis of the plan, then identify individual projects, and get into that implementation substance that really is the meat of the plan and helps identify what you do over the next 5, 10, 15 years. We're hoping to have a plan ready for your recommendation in May and town council approval in June. So starting with people and what people mean for recreation, just very high level, 30,000 foot level. These come from, this is demographic information from Esri. They do geographic information systems and associated data analysis. This is coming from the census. And then also we're drawing data from the National Recreation and Parks Association, which conducts just research, that is based on tens of thousands of park users nationwide. So just briefly, Tiburon's population is expected to grow from about 9,120 today to an estimated 9,327 in 15 years. That's sort of our planning horizon. So we're looking at about 200 people, very small, obviously, population growth, but it's there. I think that's pretty consistent with the general plan. Then you can see the population by age. Our today is the second column there. And the population is the largest block of the population is in the 55 to 74 range. And as you can see, moving out, that's going to stay more or less consistent, but also we're continuing to age with the population over 75 growing and the population under 17 staying shrinking a little bit. So it's just getting a little bit older. This is consistent with nationwide trends. The way this community and its demographics, what it means for recreation is really, really interesting. I think, this is sort of a baseline, and then we go and ask people. So these are the two levels that we're looking at. You look at general sports, and on the left, we have national participation, the sports that the most people nationwide participate in. You see basketball at the top of the list, golf, tennis, and baseball. And then on the right, you see in Tiburon, what we would expect relative to the national average, Tiburon's engagement to be. And you can see tennis really stands out there, golf as well, as sports that you would expect people in Tiburon to be more engaged with. Moving on to general fitness, you can see, and I think the thing that I like to point out about this slide is that walking for fitness, 115 million people participate in that nationwide. It's double the next activity. It's just far and away the most popular general fitness activity. And then in Tiburon, you would expect basically all of these general fitness activities, these sort of like solo recreation activities, to be popular more than the national average. We look at outdoor activities as well. This is not something that we would necessarily be as focused on supporting in the local Parks and Recreation and open space system, but we do have all this open space. There really are opportunities to connect with the water, to connect with the landscape. Day hiking, again, being the most popular, followed by road bicycling nationwide. You see recreational kayaking kind of high up there, top of the list of water sports. And certainly that has implications for Tiburon. And hiking, particularly, as well as biking, very prominent in this community. We mapped the parks and open space system, and we looked at it in a variety of ways from a variety of angles. We're just going to show a few of those maps tonight, but there are more maps available. So this map here is showing the parks and open space system, and you can see in the dark green the town of Tiburon parks, and they're not super easy to see, but I think the key there is that most of our parkland is concentrated in that sequence of parks that we're calling Richardson Bay Lineal Park, and that includes Blackie's Pasture, that includes McKegney Green, and the area south of the Knoll. The rest of the park system and the old rail trail. The rest of the park system is composed of pretty unique, kind of quirky parks. There's a couple of downtown parks. I think Shoreline Park maybe would be the next on my list to showcase because it has a lot of visibility. It's not big, but it gets a lot of use and has a lot of visibility. Zielinski Park right over here, right behind, I think it's right over there. Other than that, it's a few very, very small spaces, and I think the commission is familiar with them. Members of the Tiburon community might be familiar with the park in their community if there is one, but other than that, they wouldn't even know these sites exist. In red, or in that gold color, those are the town of Tiburon public open spaces. So you can see that land area is actually much larger, and this doesn't even include the Martha property, which is still sort of in process. But you can also see some of the other open spaces that are conserved, that are not town of Tiburon open spaces. Those are in the fainter brown. This next map is showing access to parks, and here what we're trying to show is walk sheds, walking distance. These are actually distances mapped along roadways to the nearest community park. And so the pink color represents parts of the dark pink color represents parts of Tiburon that are within a half-mile walk of a park. And so you can see that really only the neighborhoods that are pretty close to the Richardson Bay shoreline are within walking distance of a Tiburon park. But the lighter pink color is showing areas where people have access to an open space. And that's interesting because you get much, much more coverage when you start to think about people's access to trails and open space. And that's very special about this community. And then this map is showing the trail and bike network. I think this was one that was sort of painstaking to put together because we included the steps, lanes, and paths. I think I got that right. Work that you guys did last year, I think. And so that was just really about, manually drawing these onto the map. It benefits from a close look. It doesn't convey well from a distance, but it does benefit from a close look. And it's a really interesting map to imagine how that trail system and how those open spaces and parks could be more connected than they are today. And that there is this wealth of walking trails that you have already. I'm going to hand it off to Olivia to talk about our work on the assessments.
All right, so we did a few different assessments for the Parks and Open Space system. The first one was the Parks and Open Space assessment, And we spent a couple days out here in Tiburon going park by park and looking at the access to the open spaces and scoring them based on 4 categories of criteria. And those 4 categories are access and connectivity, condition, functionality, and safety and comfort. And then each category had many different categories within that overarching category. And you can see the example on the screen of those subcategories. And we took notes on all these aspects of each park and gave them a score from 1 to 10, 0 being low, 10 being high, and then averaged those overall. And so these are kind of the overarching findings we found from each category. So for access and connectivity, the park system along the shoreline, the Richards Bay Lineal Park and Shoreline Park, are really well connected to pedestrian and cycling routes, and have really permeable edges to other networks and visible access as well. So a good example of that is Shoreline Park, which is really accessible. A park that could use some help in this category is Bel Air Park, which is more closed off, only a few access points, and not very visibly accessible. For condition, we found overall that the parks are in really good condition. The landscaping, the pavement, all the amenities that are available are generally really well maintained. There's a few things that could be improved, some benches, some pavement spots, kind of minor stuff. And one of the best examples of a park that's in really good condition was Blackie's Pasture, really well maintained, all kind of sections of the park. And then Belveron Mini Park was an example of one that could use some more maintenance, some more attention. For functionality, all the parks scored pretty highly in this. We looked at, are these parks working well? Are people using them? And in general, people are really out and using all the Tiburon parks. The Old Rail Trail is really well used and kind of stood out as one of the more functional areas. And then here we're noting McKegney Green, even though it's very functional for its more formal uses like soccer, we wanted to note it as an area that could be used for other things as well. So kind of improving the functionality for multi-use space and not just having it be limited to more formal sports. For safety and comfort, all the parks scored pretty well in this category too. We looked at things like lighting, sight lines, activity, and Zielinski Park stood out as one that felt really safe, which isn't surprising since it's so new, has really good lighting, is surrounded by other uses, and there's people around. And then Tether Park could be improved in this category. It's more closed off visually, not a lot of activity, not a lot of people around to make you have that sense of safety. And then for the open spaces, we really were assessing the access points to the open spaces and the trailheads and what was available or not available at the trailheads. And in general, for all of them, found that there wasn't really formal parking at any of them. So there was some street parking, but there's not an area designated. It's not super clear that you can drive and park and access the open space. For many of them, there wasn't a distinct sidewalk network for pedestrians to access a trailhead. Not a ton of wayfinding and signage. We found a couple signs that identified them as Tiburon open spaces, but for the most part, not really there and not super informative. All the open spaces could benefit from more intensive signs with information about the trail system and kind of mapping and wayfinding. And a good example of this was the county signs at those open spaces. And we think there's opportunity to kind of integrate those systems and create a full cohesive network. And then other trailhead amenities, the just trash receptacles, benches, stuff like that would be helpful in making the open spaces more accessible as well. And then a facilities assessment, we looked at the list of buildings there. So the Dairy Knoll Center, Town Hall Community Room, South Knoll Restroom, the restroom at Blackie's Pasture, the single and the multi-facility bathroom buildings there. And these were scored on the same scoring matrix, so 0 to 10. And the things that were assessed here were space, materials, current uses, conditions, functionality, code compliance, and ADA accessibility. And overall, found that for all these facilities, they're mostly in good condition, need some ongoing maintenance. And there were some deficiencies noted, but are minor, a couple accessibility issues. They are mostly meeting the program needs, but could be adjusted a little bit to expand programming and meet additional needs. And then the recreation could be more expanded in the building facilities and are fairly limited right now. And then program assessment. So this was looking at the programming. And we looked at the list there on the left column of core program areas. So summer camp, adult programs, after school programs, tennis programs, and special events. Next slide. And you can see that these are mostly at schools and Dairy Knoll Center, kind of looking at where these programs are offered. And then we looked at Belvedere here too, because a lot of the programs are through the ranch and joint Tiburon Belvedere programs. And then dispersed, other than those main ones, dispersed evenly throughout other sites in Tiburon. And then program life cycle stage. So actually, Peter, if you want to talk about this one, not sure.
Sure, yeah. This is, it's subjective, but the idea here is to, and this was an exercise, sort of a workshop exercise between the ranch and our team, Michael Svetz leading that effort, to understand, to think about the programs in the context of, is this a new program that's still emerging? Is it a program that's growing a lot? Is it one that we've offered for quite a while and it's very stable and mature, saturated, or potentially in decline? And the basic idea is just to try to make sure that a community continues to offer new programming, continues to think about what people want now, while also supporting, the things that people come to expect and rely on and love, but little by little phasing out older programs in order to make space for new programming. That's the basic idea. So I will move on and talk about the statistically valid survey. This was conducted in August and September. I think, like I mentioned, a survey was sent to every household in Tiburon. And we got over 400 responses, which was, I think, double the rate that we needed to achieve statistical significance. So we have a very representative sample that we feel pretty confident about. And we are not going to present the results of every question because there were a lot of questions, but walk through ones that we think will be most useful for you to understand and for us as we craft the master plan. So first, satisfaction, always really interesting to know and important to know for a community. Like how are we doing? How are we doing? And I think what this is saying is that most people are quite satisfied with most of the sites. Just a lot of love for the library, Shoreline Park, McKegney Green, the rail trail, Paradise Beach Park. It goes on and on. There are some parks that are very much lagging, and that's also helpful to see. Cypress Grove and Belveron Mini Park, Tether Park and Cypress Hollow Park to a somewhat lesser degree. Not surprising to us, as we've heard things from community members about those sites, and as we visited them ourselves. Here we asked what reasons might prevent you from using parks and facilities more often, and very typical responses here, I think. Not aware of park or trail locations, lack of facilities we want to use, lack of easy parking or access. So those sort of being the top, but the first two really standing out as being the main ones. So awareness stands out. The next question, the next series of questions actually are going to get at what are the facilities and amenities that the master plan needs to really focus on. And so the first part here is we ask people to identify whether they have a need for each of this long list of potential park facilities. And so they just answered as many as they needed, they would answer. So what we see here is that the greatest number of people report needing multi-use paved trails, multi-use unpaved trails, and open space and conservation areas. Those three are sort of far and away the most needed. Then we also have a community center, picnic areas and shelters, a kayak or a small craft launch, outdoor tennis and pickleball courts, and then it kind of goes down. Then the next question, which follows that one, is please rate how well your needs are being met now. So first was, what are your needs? And now it's like, how well are those being met? And so blue, either dark or lighter blue, are people who feel that their need for that facility is being at least 75% met. So you can see that even though there's a large need for some of those things, they may already be being met pretty well. So that applies to multi-use paved trails, open space and conservation areas, and unpaved trails. Also large community parks, interestingly, because I think you have that large sequence of parks along Richardson Bay. It's worth scrutinizing and looking at the list in more detail, but I wanted to actually show and focus more on this slide, which is the composite. This is the slide that is inferred from the questions. This was not actually a question, but was an analysis. So based on those previous questions, according to the survey, the top priorities for investment for facilities and amenities should be in, and you can see that that top tier of high priority amenities include a kayak or small craft launch, multi-use paved and unpaved trails, swimming pool, or access to a swimming pool, a community center, off-leash dog park, outdoor tennis / pickleball courts, and open space and conservation areas. And that's not to say that those other amenities should be just forgotten and cast aside. They may have very passionate constituencies as well that may not translate at the whole survey scale, but may merit consideration because there may be a passionate set of users. The next question is about open space. So thinking about the open spaces, what potential improvements would make them more attractive? And here, the top responses were restrooms, water fountains, refill stations, trailhead, and wayfinding signage, and then more trails and trail connections and down from there. But really things that, I think are consistent with things that Olivia was reporting about, seeing that at the trailheads, there's not very much signage, there's not really amenities there. How important do you feel it is for the town to provide high quality parks and recreation facilities and programs? Here, I think, again, this is really important because it's a marker of, well, how is it important for us to do the work that we're doing right now? Is this something that people care about? And I think the answer is yes. We're seeing that 71% of residents thought this was very important and another 20% somewhat important. So definitely an expectation that parks and public open spaces and recreation programs are part of what we have here. The next questions are just showing demographics of the survey respondents. So here we see the breakdown of ages, and it's important to say that survey respondents were asked to list the ages of all the people in their household. So the respondents probably weren't age 5 to 9, But there were those folks in the household, and I think this is a nice cross section of the community. How many years have you lived in the town of Tiburon? The greatest number have lived here over 31 years. And half of the survey respondents have lived here 21 years or more. Which of the following best describes your race? White or Caucasian, 81.8, Asian, or I'm trying to read here, or Asian Indian, 7.9, and Hispanic, 6.6. I think these track, I just looked at the census figures, these track very closely in that way. So that's a positive. And then male and female, evenly matched. And what is your age? So this would be the survey respondent. So you see a sort of narrower range of age groups here, but a good spread as well. Now, Olivia will talk a little bit about what we did in the community and what we've heard.
Yeah, so we've done a few different community engagement events. We did 2 pop-ups in early and mid-June at already existing events. So we had people at Friday Night on Main and the Classic Car Show. And then we did stakeholder interviews with community leaders also in June to kind of kick off the project. And you can see the list of groups that we met with and got feedback from. And then we had 2 community workshops, which were the same workshop, but just offering a virtual option. So one was in person here on September 11th, and we had about 30 people attend that. And then we offered the same format workshop the next day online. And there were approximately 5 to 10 people in that workshop. And then the last thing we did was a community walking tour in late September, which is that photo there. And we took a tour of the Richardson Bay Lineal Park, and we'll go through it in more detail in a minute, but had stops and heard from people about what they wanted to see at those sites. So here's what we heard from the pop-ups. We had 2 kind of feedback boards at the pop-ups. This is the first one that was asking people to write down on sticky notes and share ideas about what they already love about the Tiburon Parks and Recreation and open space system, and then what features, programs, amenities should be added or focused on. And some main themes we heard from these events were that people really like that they're clean and well maintained, safe and comfortable, thoughtful design, and green and beautiful natural features. And then things that people said should be added are playgrounds, art installation, community events, more activities and spaces for kids and teens, sports courts and fields, and seating. The other engagement board at the pop-ups was this dot exercise. So we had amenities, possible additional amenities listed with little photographs, and people got to vote with sticky dots on what they wanted to be added. And that list there is showing the top 10 things that people voted for. So number 1 with 68 votes was sand volleyball. And you can see the color coding at the bottom is the categories of these possible amenities. So people were really voting for additional recreation and amenities more than anything else. The answers in green there. And then the second most popular category was comfort and safety things like restrooms, lighting, water fountains, and then less from the other categories, but still some votes for those. And then this is the feedback from the community workshop. So combining the in-person and the virtual. And at this workshop, we broke it down by issues, vision, and outcomes. So the first question was about issues. What key issues should the Parks and Recreation Master Plan address? And the main themes we heard with this question were high speeds on the old rail trail. So people talked about bikes, e-bikes, e-scooters, traveling on the trail at high speeds and making some pedestrians and other users feel uncomfortable, unsafe, sharing the trail with them. We heard that there's not a lot for teenagers to do, not a lot of spaces that cater to them. People would like more community events. There aren't an adequate amount of spaces and amenities for seniors. People talked about not having enough playgrounds and play areas, and that they're hard to access from parking and bathrooms. So the ones that do exist are nice, but it's hard to get there with kids and families. People reported that there could be increased signage, and people don't necessarily know what's at each park or what's going on because there's not very clear signage, and then just more playgrounds as well. The second question asked about vision. So we had people note down their vision for the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space in Tiburon. And you can see people's answers here: safe, vibrant spaces, a path network that feels safe, spaces that encourage socialization and meeting others, a variety of activities for everybody, especially teens. People want to maintain the natural beauty that already exists in the park system here. Noting that some of the parks need more attention than others, and kind of improving those ones and bringing the whole system up. And then again, wanting more programs for all ages, especially seniors. And then we asked people to synthesize the issues and visions. So what we had been discussing, kind of what outcomes, what tangible things do we want to see from this master plan? And these are the main things we heard from this activity, talking about water access. So there was a discussion about wanting a kayak launch or some sort of water access into the bay, and then as a swimming pool as well. So like Peter mentioned earlier, not necessarily one in Tiburon, although that would be an option that people supported, but some sort of access to pool or swimming programs. Completing the trail network was also a big theme. There's a lot of trails, but it's not fully connected, and people want a way to travel throughout the entire network unimpeded. Shade and restrooms to make parks and trails easier to enjoy. So again, about accessibility and making it easy for everybody to use these facilities. More community events. The example of Kite Day was brought up as an event that used to exist, and people would like to see events brought back, more added. Again, more children's play equipment, either moved to be more accessible to parking and easier to get to, or adding parking or making the existing playgrounds more accessible. More mapping that's cohesive throughout the system and potentially interactive and educational. So kind of more comprehensive signage. Activities for seniors, bocce ball was brought up as a good example for this category a few times. And then spaces and activities for teens again. So the next one, this is the information we gathered from the walking tour. So the images here are of a little booklet that was part of the walking tour. We gave all the participants one, and each page of the booklet was one of the stops on the tour. And we had people write down what they observed about the place and what kind of changes they would like to see at these stops. So the first one was the Richardson Bay Sanitary District site, the ponds between Blackie's and McKegney Green. And the main responses we got here on changes were that this would be a good spot for sports courts. So people want volleyball courts, pickleball, rock climbing, and think that this might be a good area for that. Could be a good bocce ball site, some sort of community space, like a small amphitheater, a more informal area for events. There's the desire for a dog park, and this space could also serve that. Benches, grassy areas, reflection point. Skate park came up as being potentially a good fit for this site, and then community center. The second stop was south of the Knoll. So we stopped there and discussed, and the things we heard from this stop. Again, comments about the playground being somewhat inaccessible. It's not super close to parking. People are parking at Blackie's and having to walk all the way over. So adding parking here or rearranging the playgrounds to make it more accessible. we talked about speeds again on the old rail trail at this stop and wanting some sort of way to enforce speeds or monitor that and make it feel safer. Ideas of public art installations came up kind of throughout, but south of the knoll was thought to be a good space for this. Again, talking about signage, playgrounds, more comfort amenities like picnic tables, more seating, potentially a trail to the top of the knoll. You can kind of scramble up there now, but formalizing that a bit, making it more accessible. Another good place for bocce ball, and then place for dogs. So people are maybe currently using it as an off-leash dog area, but kind of deciding what you want that space to be and making it a more formal place for that. The third stop was McKegney Green. And as we touched on a bit earlier, we talked about how to use this space for things other than formalized sports. So more community events, maybe concerts, movies, art installations. We talked about how it's also somewhat hard to access here. You're parking at Blackie's and walking over. So the need for a safer crossing on Tiburon Boulevard to reach there, and potentially screening from that too with planting or something like that from the noise of the passing traffic. More need for seating, especially with games. People want areas to sit and watch. And then more discussion of the old rail trail at this stop and kind of the speeds and how we might improve that, maybe separate bikes and pedestrians and break up the trail into separate uses. The fourth one was Blackie's Pasture, our fourth stop. And at this stop, people wanted more like picnic areas. There was talk of barbecue pits, adding to the picnic areas that are already there, formalizing a dog park area, could be a good spot for exercise equipment, bike trails, pump track, maybe some more planting and kind of separating the pasture a bit, adding trees along the trail, moving a playground to this area or adding a playground here would help with that accessibility issue to playgrounds. Expanding the community garden that already exists, and then just more trees. And then our last stop was Greenwood Beach, and here we talked about similar things at the other stops, but people thought more seating, more comfort amenities, shade. This would be a good place for more educational signage, so not just wayfinding, but maybe some like environmental information, that kind of stuff. Water access, although we noted this was maybe not a good candidate for water access, but we discussed it. More community garden space, another space that could be used as a more formal dog park, and then maybe an outdoor shower to rinse off after being in the bay. And that is the community engagement that we've done so far.
Yeah, so we're eager to hear what comments or questions you might have. And then we can also share more about next steps. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Peter and Olivia. Really appreciate all the work that went into this. And thank you to the whole WRT team. We're going to open up to commissioner questions first, then public comments, then we'll do discussion items. So first, commissioner questions. I'm sure there are many. Commissioner Hornbrook?
Yeah, I'll start off. And thanks again, you guys, really appreciate. And I love the data actually after the discussion point, because that wasn't on the original piece, I don't think, that was sent to us. And I just started going like, oh my gosh, it's everything that I was looking for. A couple questions. And this is just kind of getting a sense for you. On the survey data and the demographics for the town, there was like of an age difference between the demographic information you had. I think it goes 75 and up. And I think the survey data was up to 65. But just based on your conclusions, would you say that the survey skewed a little to the older demographic? That would be my conclusion. I'm asking that question. Pardon me? Oh, what? I was on. It's all good here. I tend not to, the baritone goes a little deep sometimes. I could specifically tell you which tables they are if it helps. So it's the first is the population by age segment. It looks like 75 plus. So it's like 15%, but then the data from the survey is at 65 plus. So it was hard to kind of like make an inference like, oh, is this a good sample? But then if you look at the big chunk, it seems like it's really that the 65 and older is really a little bit oversampled. By what degree, I don't know. But my question is, you guys are the statisticians. I just play one in the movies.
So yeah, so this is a great question. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to provide the right answer, but let me just look at it briefly. I see 65 plus at 30. So this is of the respondents. So there may be younger people in their household, but the respondents, 30% of the respondents were 65 or over. I did a quick look at the census snapshot demographics. 65 plus make up 23% of Tiburon's population. So it is, like you say, a little oversampled in terms of respondents. I'm not sure how that maps onto people in households, but yes, I see that. I think that is true.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. I'm glad you guys have the scoring process of the back table, because that was another question. Why I was like, I'd love to see those scores of all those different parks. So that's great. So thank you. There seems to be a high level of satisfaction with the facilities, with everything. Question 2. And is the question to you guys, is that typical that you see in other communities?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think this was definitely looking like a community that is happy with the parks and open spaces. Yeah,
Okay.
but you see a lot of variability space to space, and that's important information as well.
Yep. Another question I have on the data is question 16 assumes that it's stated that 51% of the respondents have lived in Tiburon for 20 years or more, which is pretty. My assumption though on that is that if I was born in Tiburon and lived here for 18 years and then moved away and then came back and raised my kids and lived here for another 15 years, then I would be one of those people. Is that a fair assumption?
I guess that depends on how people who responded to the survey would interpret it. I would think so. I would think people would aggregate the years. Yeah.
So and there's a fair amount of folk like
That's
that.
interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that. Yeah, I think we got a lot of responses from people who have lived here for a long time. I think this is part of why we do a survey, but we also do other forms of engagement, is that in each case there are there are going to be some shortcomings. I think the survey is the most reliable because we have a very pretty we have a representative sample. I'm not going to say it's perfect because, like, as you point out, the age representation may be a little bit off, but we're in the 95% confidence range. At the same time, we want to make sure to hear the voices of individual groups that we know need to be served and may not be being served as well as they can be by the Parks and Open Space system. So that was part of the purpose of the sort of focus groups that we did, the stakeholder groups. And we will do, actually, we're going to be doing one more of those with parents of small children. So that is an important, I think, view. And we're seeing, even in, all the engagement that we did, playgrounds, just a lot of that kind of comment as well. And there is that, I think we are sensing that there are needs of families with children, there are needs of seniors, and these all kind of need to be met, but we need to not lose sight of any of those groups.
Right. Thank you. Just one of the other issues is that one of your slides, the most meaty data, which I love, the need for facilities and amenities, and please rate how well your needs are. Both of those are labeled question 10. I'm assuming one of them is not. So something you want to look at. I don't know what page that is, but I have some questions on some things that I thought that were missing. And I don't want to take up, I want to be cognizant of and maybe I'll look to Angela a little bit on some of these questions, because maybe they were taken out of scope. But a couple things that I thought were missing. And I'm going to go kind of like from parks and open space. So we didn't include now, and we're in a unique area here with the town of Belvedere, city of Belvedere being right there. And there's a lot of overlap between the two facilities. There's a shared library. The ranch is a joint powers. The school district overlaps both jurisdictions. In this, we're closer now here to a playground in Belvedere. I'm closer to a dog park that's not an official dog park here, that's in Belvedere, from this facility right here. And I was wondering if that was anything that you all thought about including in that distance to other parks and amenities, including Strawberry Recreation District, which you didn't list on here, but is close to some people who live on the northern part of town. As well as the fields and things at the school districts. I have played touch football at Bel Air. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to, but I did. So whether or not that's part of the analysis, and again, I think I don't want to add scope to it, Angela, but I thought that those are just a lot of green spaces that people, because to your point about small children, there's a small children playground in Belvedere. And nobody checks IDs. So, same thing on facilities. So, Ranch uses the school district's gymnasiums for things. And I think that was a little bit listed on yours. And then I did bring this up in another meeting. I know but there's also other programs that are offered by the library. So actually the library is going through a very similar process about like what needs does the community have, and I'm happy to send you this. I asked the director of the library to send me their like program plan, and she sent it to me for the next month. And it includes like how to use a 3D printer. There's an Italian conversational Spanish, intermediate to advanced for those who are keeping score, and all kinds of other things. And it's also the largest public room on the peninsula next door. It seats 90. I don't know the total square footage, but so that's one other thing that I thought was missing. And then also just the programs that are available for the aquatics. Strawberry Rec allows that. Also, the Tiburon Peninsula Club is open to people, and I asked their heads. The Belvedere Tennis Club is not, but Tiburon Peninsula Club does have an availability to the public if you want to take swim lessons there, if you want to be on the water polo team, if you want to be on the swim team. There is an ability to do that, which I think would be, sometimes to your point, it's not awareness, they may not be there. And somebody from the club was going to send me something, and I'm happy to forward it to Angela, who can forward it to you all. So I thought those kind of things were missing on that.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate the scrutiny. And I think I can respond to some of those. The proximity to recreation features outside of Tiburon, that is a good catch. We didn't include that in our watershed map. Nor did we include schools on the watershed map. But you can see the effect that school facilities could have on increasing access to parks in that same map by recognizing there's a gap in access to parks, but there's a school site there. So it implies that that site can be part of the solution. I think we do need to look, I think, understand a little bit more what the facilities are in Belvedere and at Strawberry. We have just completed, but it's not being reported here, sort of a market scan of recreation programming offered by Strawberry and some of the other neighboring communities. So that will be part of our analysis, but it wasn't quite ready for this presentation. And then, as you say, the library actually wasn't part of our scope of work, so we weren't able to look at that in detail. But I think it's a great point. And I think that part of what we need to understand when we make recommendations for programming is is leveraging and not overlapping with great offerings that are being provided by others. And also, thank you for the information about the Peninsula Club. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other commissioner questions? I have a question. Will we be able, is there a way for the commission or even the public for that matter to see all the data that you collected, all of the responses?
Yeah, well, we will be posting, we have been posting memos of the material as we go. I think we haven't yet posted the full results, or let's say a summary of the community engagement results, but we do intend to post that. And as appendices, I think we'll have photographs of individual response boards.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, so that should be coming soon, and that is being posted on the website.
Thank you. So no other. Any
Yeah, I had
other
a quick
questions?
question
Commissioner?
regarding the pop-up kind of data. One thing that kind of struck me was sand volleyball. It was like off the charts, #1 in terms of interest, but when you look at the survey data, it was in the bottom quartile, maybe bottom decile of interest. And so just wondering how you reconcile kind of conflicting data points there.
Yeah, that really struck me as well. You know, the list of amenities that we included at the pop-ups is not the same list that we included on the survey. And I think it would have been good if they had been more consistent, because we would be able to be more apples to apples. I think we were trying with the pop-ups to spark creativity and help people imagine things that aren't here now. And I think for whatever reason, the people who came by the pop-ups really responded to sand volleyball, and it didn't really emerge from the survey at all. I think the pop-ups, we don't have demographic information of who we connected with at the pop-ups. There were a lot more kids. There were a lot more kids, because Friday night on Main, we had a lot of kids actually come by, have a lot of interest, put up sticky notes, put up dots, and somehow sand volleyball, I think, looked fun to them. So that's how I interpret it. And I also think we need to pay attention to all of the results. And even though sand volleyball didn't come out high in the survey, maybe what we're seeing is there's a lot of curiosity, and there could be a lot of intensity of interest. Maybe not a huge group of people who would right off the bat check it on the survey, but there seems to be the kernel of a lot of interest.
Got it. One other question I had was on your needs for facilities versus needs met. I noticed that tennis and pickleball courts were combined as a category. But it might be possible that my tennis needs are met, but my pickleball needs are certainly not met in this community. And so how did you kind of parse that, and why did you combine it? Because I think they're two distinct sports and different communities that play. There's a lot of overlap, but in terms of actual facilities, I think one's clearly lacking in our town versus the other.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think sometimes they are seen as a flexible, you know, you can stripe and restripe and use the same actual court. So it's the same actual facility, or it can be. But I think it would have been clearer to ask those as separate questions. We can also look at it in terms of sort of a level of service, like how many, you know, and we have benchmarks. It's not a science, but we have benchmarks of sort of how many facilities of each type should we have for a certain amount of people. And I think that's going to be a way to kind of tease out, like, yeah, there's enough tennis courts here. There's not any pickleball. There's not any dedicated pickleball courts. And we see that. And we're going to be drawing on experience that we have from other communities as well to understand the court, the sort of to formulate a good approach to those courts.
I know we have another question from Commissioner Hornbrook.
Thank you. On, I think it's page 33, please rate how well your needs for facilities and amenities are met. It was an interesting, I love this data, but what struck me was kind of the bimodal ones, the ones in the middle, in which people said, yeah, everything's really met, or like, no, nothing's really met. I mean, I thought that was really, so like Off Leash Dog Park, some at the community center, public art for sure is on that note. Is it versus like everybody needs a golf course here. I love how people want to have a golf course here. There was a golf course in Belvedere Island a long time ago, but But I thought that was really interesting about that bimodalness. And is there a conclusion you all can draw from that? Or is like, nah, it's just that's some are met, some aren't met. I mean, there's clear directionality on some of them, but some of them it's hard.
Yeah, so the golf course is interesting. I mean, it's not a very high need either. We see it as a need for 17% and as a met need for 3%. And yeah, there aren't golf courses here, so it's not a met need here. But it then doesn't end up rising into the high priority list because it's also not a big need. So that's how those two charts kind of get put together. I haven't maybe looked at it as carefully as I should. I think that those need the facilities that are where the need is very, very low. The met need is very, very low. Those are facilities for the most part that just aren't present here. So pool, sand volleyball, skate parks, kayak launch, splash pads, we don't have them. And they are needed to different levels. And so they rise to different levels of priority. But I think that this also demands some just more attention and more scrutiny as we begin to develop recommendations.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner McInerney?
As I understand that the survey is closed. So I was wondering, you could probably know if we reopened the survey so that more people, as they're reading about this in the ARC, you kind of have to hit people over the head to really, I mean, here's what the survey came in. This nondescript envelope that most people probably threw into their trash can. But as more people are learning, and maybe as more people with younger families and kids are learning, and they say, hey, I really missed that survey, but I wanted to fill it out, I just never had the chance, or I had it on my to-do list, but I never got to it, and then this survey closed. Would it be possible to open it up and just, as the community is learning more, that, hey, this is really something you want to get involved in at this point, not in June when everything is getting presented of this is what the town wants. Now is the time to actually get involved. Is it possible to open it up again?
Well, it's possible. I think it would have budget implications, to be honest, because we'd have to then analyze that data. And it would have schedule implications because we are continuing to try to move forward. Now we're trying to sort of pivot from data gathering to recommendations. So if we need to be gathering more data and getting more input, I think it does necessarily extend the time frame for the project.
Got it.
We do have more opportunities for engagement. We will be having another series of workshops, one in person and one virtual. But I think if there is a desire to, bring that back and do a survey again, and then I'm just saying I think there are implications, but it doesn't mean we can't do it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move to public comment. Do we have any public comment in person or online? Jim? Please come to the microphone and remember, just introduce yourself and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you, Jim.
I'm Jim Wood. Lived in Tiburon 20 years, 25. Do you have hard copies of the graphics you showed? It was you can get it.
Jim, I
I'd
can
really like
provide
to
those too.
Yeah. Secondly, did you ever look at the properties, the parks, and come up with your own ideas and throw those out to people? Would you like this? Or are you just waiting for the people to come up with ideas?
Yeah, good question. We are, as I was saying, we're now pivoting. I mean, it's iterative. We have our ideas as we go. I mean, we can't help but think about and envision, what it all means. But the next stage is for us to develop sort of preliminary recommendations and concepts for different sites. And the next stage of community engagement is where we want to test those ideas with people.
Yeah, because I came up with an idea several years ago of an amphitheater at South Knoll Park. And people say, oh, I never thought about it. That'd be a great meeting place. But not everyone can come. And that leads into my next question is, you had a graphic up there that said you met with Green Team. I am positive you have never met with Green Team. We spend 25 to 30 hours a month out there for the last 2 years. And we'd love to sit down with you because we see what people do. We talk with them. They share with us and we're not, it's anecdotal. I certainly agree, but we see kids riding bikes, they're building their own pump tracks, they're building their own areas, and they're good kids and they really would like something to do. And I didn't see a lot of that up there. I saw some of it, but I'd sure like to meet with you, and all of Green Team would, but you haven't done it yet, so please take it off that visual.
Jim, we had just a meeting. I think it was just you it was you and maybe 2 of your helpers, but this was maybe a couple of months back, but not with the whole team to sit down and talk.
Absolutely.
But if we can,
Yeah, I mean, we met with representatives of the groups on that list. We didn't meet with every single person involved with every group.
No, but I mean, we didn't get a chance to have I remember that meeting and we came in off the field, off the job, and we'd really like to sit down with you.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Yeah, thank you. And great to hear the ideas of the amphitheater and the acknowledgement of the kids and what they're doing on their own. I think that's it's so important to just see how people are using the space on their own, what they're inventing, because it's an indication of what they want to do, what they could.
It's about 25 to 30 hours a month for the last 2 years we've been working. And we have some other ideas in regard to maintenance that we'd like to share.
Thank you.
I'd really like to make it a worthwhile meeting to have that information. Yeah.
I will do that. Yes. And just you and I can chat and we'll come up with a date and time. We'll have a little focus group.
Be great.
All right.
May I make it just one second? Jim, I did pass along the report we finished that was adopted by Post and adopted by Town Council, the nature-based enhancements along Old Rail Trail. I shared that with WRT.
Oh.
So they have.
I'm not following you.
Do you remember when we were working on Post together?
Oh,
And we made the nature-based enhancements and
Yeah.
maintenance plan for Old Rail Trail?
Yeah.
I shared it with WRT, so they have the amphitheater, the labyrinth, the
Ah.
plein air art classes, all those things that were in that report, they have.
thanks.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much
Sure.
again, and thank you to the whole Green Team. We will go now to public questions or comments from online.
Chair, I do not see any hands raised at this time.
Okay, so now we're going to go to commissioner discussion. Now that we've asked our questions, do any commissioners have any comments you want to make or discussion to share on this topic?
My only comment will be, please, let's get the word out to more people. I'd really like to see a lot more public input. I'd love to see sandwich boards up at Blackie's pasture, so that as people are recreating, they, hey, there's a meeting coming up on this date that's going to discuss the master plan. I'd love to see more next door posts and things that go out to really hit people over the head, to get them to get involved before it gets too late.
I guess also a question to the WRT team is this same presentation, are you presenting that to Jessica and her board, or is it going to be a little bit more skewed toward the ranch stuff, which is cool. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a variation on this presentation that, for example, with the survey questions, there were other survey questions that were much more focused on recreation. So those are the ones that are in that presentation.
Gotcha. And then based on all this feedback, then for the Wednesday meeting with town council next week, it'll be kind of a combination of the two. I'm assuming.
Combination, and maybe it's a little bit tighter. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. Understood. Okay. Yeah, echo Angela's point on, but it's trying to get what the feedback should be from the community on that, right? It's, oh yeah, I agree with that, or it's hard. It's what feedback would be helpful for drawing conclusions for the next 6 months.
Yeah, and I think the main thing that I heard from you was visibility, outreach, getting people to show up. And I completely agree. We have a website, and I think we publicized previously with, the ARC and TikTok and Facebook and social media and whatever. There may be an opportunity to do more in terms of signage, and maybe engaging community leaders to reach out within their own communities. I think there's some creative thinking that we can do to get further with outreach.
There's also those little signage boards as you're coming into town or now by the library. I don't know how Patty is in charge of all that, but I don't know how impacted they are they get pretty filled, but maybe we could squeeze a sign onto those.
Yeah, for the next Wednesday's meeting,
Well, no, for the
town council meeting, that's the only opportunity a member of town would have an opportunity to comment on this. Well, I mean, they can come to the website, but there's no way to give comments on the plan, on anything on the website.
So we will be doing, and actually, let me get back to can I show the presentation again to show the schedule slide?
the January public workshops.
Yeah. I think our next good opportunity because this is more of an informational presentation. Still an opportunity for comments from the public, but also at these workshops in January will give people, I think, more of an engaged opportunity to think about specific recommendations and specific site improvements. So we're looking to have those in January, and we will be working with you and with David and the whole team to do outreach in advance of those.
Just want to offer that I think it's those site-specific recommendations that are the most crucial for public feedback and engagement, because without the plan about what could go where, it's all just, yeah, we want it, we love it, great. But when you start to think about what could go where, that's actually really where we might hear community differences. And we want to get a sense of where there is the most energy and support, or where there's the most contention and controversy over an idea.
I'm curious, how does cost impact how you guys are thinking about your recommendation? Is this a plan of what's possible and what we should do regardless of money, or does the cost or the utility per dollar impact your recommendation?
Yeah, it's a really important question. We are in parallel. We had a workshop with staff and the town manager last week or 2 weeks ago to talk about funding strategy, funding opportunities. Yes, I think this whole part of what we're doing is about identifying priorities. And then there's a whole other exercise of how much of this can we fund and finance in the next 15 years and be realistic about that and have a strategy for doing it.
we have any other discussion items from discussion comments from
So
commissioners?
you guys mentioned on the website, so where I'm on the town website?
There's a website for the project. I think it's tiburonparks.com. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's no link from the main website. Did you go there? I don't know. I click on the Tiburon News Park and Recreation Master Plan. Then I don't see anything.
It doesn't look like it's linking, but this might be a quick, can we get it to link request? Okay. I don't think we need to hang up the meeting for it. Let's just make sure it links and is super visible on the town's main page.
Yeah. Under the,
And maybe with some extra flashiness, attention about like opportunities for public engagement, something like that.
and if I, just one last comment, to echo Commissioner Moon's point on the cost benefit or the other pieces, you guys during your discussion clearly identified like total low hanging fruit, like people don't know where the path is. Wouldn't it be great if, I mean, that's such a low cost to do something like that. I think that would just, having all those pieces as part of your analysis would be super valuable. So thank you. Like things you can do that tomorrow. Things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some of these things are way easier than others. Yeah.
Can I ask a question about scope actually related to that? Which is one consistent piece of feedback we've always heard is that the public don't know where to find the parks. We don't actually have all this on a website. I know a number of us have said we want to do this. Could that be a part of this project, or is that out of scope?
We are scoped to do provide materials, and actually there was a scope piece added to create and manage a website for the process. So that is part of the scope is to manage this website for this process. Not after the plan, as an outcome to have, a more robust web digital presence of the park system would be great. It isn't part of our scope, but it could be something that we could add potentially. Or maybe it would be a different follow-on project.
I definitely think that at least the commission should consider the work of creating the website, that digital interface for the park system and whatever we're doing as a part of the project. So making sure that the town's website is really fully has all the information about the parks, whatever is happening in an ongoing manner, and it doesn't exist, where the parks are, maps, locations, should be a part of this master plan. So we can maybe add that in when we get to that.
I think there may be a series of recommendations around communication and marketing, and that would be a great one. And that would be an implementation action, and hopefully an early implementation action following the plan. That's how I would see that. And no reason not to start now if you can.
And I think that's a great suggestion. And just also noting that in our discussions with the town staff about what the available budgets and how recommendations might fit budgets, we should include budgeting for that piece of it in the picture of town funding and financing for the overall master plan, projects and updates.
Absolutely, and that's something we can discuss in our Parks Master Plan subcommittee meetings that we have. And to your point, yes, you are correct. We have a link in there, but it's hidden deeply on our website under news flashes. So I'm gonna ask our clerk to kindly place it there on the homepage somewhere where it's readily available.
Thank you much. Well, so with that, I think we should move. Do we have any other questions, discussion on this? Right. Well, then, I would move us to the first discussion item, or actually the only discussion item on this agenda, which is the Cypress Hollow Park. Thank you again to Peter and Olivia and WRT. Really appreciate all this work.
Thank you for your great leadership and scrutiny of the work. We
Thanks.
look forward to getting back to you.
Look forward to the future phases. Some fun stuff yet to come in this project. Okay, so discussion item 1, Cypress Hollow Park. We've heard, Post has heard from many members of the community over the past couple of years that the Cypress Hollow Park is in need of maintenance. And so we looked into it, and I want to ask David to share the information that you had for this piece.
Chair, we went out there, actually took some pictures today so that you can see the park, how we saw it. I'm just going to run through some of these pictures, but before I do that, I did actually have a meeting with our operations manager. Just wanted an update of what we do out there and how often and what happens. So I was told that they spend about an hour and a half a week there, typically on Tuesdays. That's the Cypress Hollow cleanup day, is Tuesdays. And what they do is they just trim, they weed, they used to mow. They blow, clean fixtures, check the fixtures, make sure that the playground, all the pieces are in there. Everything's in safe working condition. They spend about an hour to 2 hours a month on irrigation work. If there's any broken drip lines, plants are dying and they're noticing shrubbery's not getting water, they spend about 2 hours a month there. And then they also get called on additional work if additional work is performed if residents call them and notice something's not working correctly. The area in question where we used to have grasses by the cypress trees, it never really, because of the shade, because of the roots, it just never took. That grass, I think in the last 8 years, it's been resawed twice, and mainly it's just the shade, and it's kind of like the de facto dog park there too now. So the dogs love the grass, and it just doesn't do well. So since we had the drought issued by MMWD that we couldn't water, we stopped watering, and that actually accelerated the death of that sod out there, and we never really went back to do anything. But because of residents coming in and Post Commission wanting to know what we're doing out there and what we can do to help the residents, we did actually but went out and sought out some estimates on what it would take to resod the area that had grass out there. The estimate that we did get is between $7,000 and $8,000. That's for prep and resod. We don't have to do any sprinkler work out there because it's already there. So $7,000 to $8,000 to resod it. The second thing we're looking at is perhaps going with artificial turf. The estimates that we did get for artificial turf is right around $26,000 for about 1,300 square feet of artificial turf. This is going to be installed professionally by a contractor, but that's another price that we did get. So this is a discussion item. We're not going to move forward with anything. We're just bringing it to your attention that right now status quo is just cleaning, trimming, blowing, checking the equipment. But the option of putting in sod is there for 7,000. And the option of going with artificial turf is there as well for between $25,000 and $26,000. So our plan is to basically come back to post-commission in January with an actual plan and an actual cost estimate for both. And also send out mailers to the 44 members of the landscape lighting district to please come to this meeting that we will have at post in January. And at that point, see which direction post commission recommends us going. In the end product, the neighbors will get something there, whether it be sod or artificial turf. But in the long run, we do like the artificial turf because of, one, we will not need to water anymore. We will not need to mow. The kind that we're looking at is pet friendly, antimicrobial. So it's a commercial grade sod that we're looking at, or artificial turf that we're looking at. So we want to come back to post with an actual, bid and proposal, and get the neighborhood involved as well, so that we can get feedback from them. And then at that point, see what post would recommend us doing. This is a maintenance project, so it falls within our maintenance scope out there. So based on the recommendation we get from post commission, once they hear what the neighbors would like out there, that's the route we would take moving forward. And I'll just kind of run through some of these photos that were taken late this morning. Front view of Cypress Hollow Park. Some side views there where you can see the grass is pretty much gone. We do a pretty good job with the trimming and the blowing, making sure the park is as clean as possible. We did have a lot of issues when we had the sandbox out there. Kids were taking that sand and kind of dispersing it all over the place, in the water fountain, in the structures, in the grass, and that wasn't helping either. But now that we have the bark there, that's really, it's helped keep the place clean. Again, the cypress trees, the roots, don't help at all. Tough to keep sod. It's virtually, it's tough to keep that grass going with the shade as well. But minus the grass, I think our crews have done a real good job in keeping that place nice and clean. They have told me that our maintenance is on Tuesdays, but they do go out there on Mondays typically, because they know it's been used a lot over the weekend. So they'll do just a quick round on Mondays, but Tuesdays is their actual cleanup day out there and maintenance. So I'll let commission if you have
What
any
day is
questions.
trash day?
I don't know that answer. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll get that back to you. I want to say, I don't think it's Monday. I think it's either Wednesday or Thursday, but I'll get that answer for you.
Okay, so we have commissioner questions. Any other commissioner questions? That's all right.
I'm curious, is the natural state of that area dirt or grass? Like, were we trying to impose something that wasn't naturally there and that's why it keeps dying, or do we know the answer to that?
Well, we've always tried to keep grass growing there, but we've had a hard time just because of the tree, the root system, the dogs. The dogs are doing a number on that sod. We're getting an estimate on something that is more native, a native type grass. And so we don't want to put just standard sod, residential sod out there, something that can actually work, a little more durable, maybe some mixture of Bermuda and rye, and see what we can come up with. So we're waiting on our consultant, our contractor, to get back to us what would work best in that area for natural sod. But for artificial turf, we do have a pretty good idea of what it'll take, and the cost will be right around 26,000.
Okay.
Any other questions? Knowing we'll have more of a presentation in the January meeting, right?
Yeah. Yes, January will come back with actual
More details.
more detail with a plan showing where the grass will go and the cost for each. And hopefully we'll have some neighborhood involvement and comments on what they'd like to see out there.
Great. Do we have any members of the public online that want to speak up with comments or questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. I can bring this back for discussion. I would just recommend we keep it short, just because we know we'll get many more details in the next meeting, and we'll actually have the benefit of hearing from the community in the next meeting. But with that said, does anyone have any discussion items?
Actually, I would like to discuss this park a little bit. So the consultants that were just here gave it a score of 7.9 on its condition, which is just one below Blackie's pasture in the high end. So the outside consultants believe that it's an okay shape. This park has an interesting history with recent history, actually, that Commissioner McInerney and I are familiar with, is that it is a playground for little kids. That's one element that's at this park. The Parks and Department, we put a porta-john in there because there was a lot of diapers around there, because there's no bathroom facility. So they put a porta, and the residents didn't like it, so we actually had it removed. Then the people who have a lot of little kids there said, hey, could you restrict the dogs being there? That would be nice. And we tried to move forward on that, and we decided no. So they wanted to have dogs there all the time. So it's an interesting little small neighborhood park that has a very strong, very bimodal constituent of people who have no kids and have dogs, and people who have small children and like to use the park. So I'm somewhat, it's great that we're bringing it up in January, but there's a little bee in my bonnet that we aren't the pickleball court study that was passed by us 2 years ago has been suspended until this study is done here. But yet we're going to move forward to decide to spend money in sod, potentially $26,000 for a very small park. While we wait for, why not wait for the study? Just figure out like, oh, gee, let's make this a dog park or this. I'm not trying to annoy people, but boy, that seems to be like some things move forward and some things don't. And it's somewhat frustrating as a commissioner trying to move things forward, like, oh, this is a squeaky wheel, so let's address it.
David, I know you have a response. So why don't you go, and then I can add in, because I know a couple reasons why, but I think you'll probably respond better.
Vice Chair Hornbrook, one reason why we actually are wanting to move forward with this park is because the residents are contributing yearly with the landscape lighting district towards maintenance and upkeep. It is a public park, so it is open for everybody. It's a unique park. It's the only one here that is partially funded by the residents, but open to all residents. So we feel like they do have a little bit more of a say-so in their neighborhood park, because they do contribute. I think overall it's close to $17,000 a year for partial maintenance.
One other thing I know you had told me when we put this on the agenda was that for any new park use, obviously we would incorporate that in the master plan and the planning. But for maintenance, for just maintaining the state of a park the way that it has been, there is a maintenance budget and that may not need to be part of a master plan to discuss or act on new park uses. And this was considered maintenance because the park always had grass and lost it. And it has been a natural, sort of a routine, regular part of the park's maintenance to resod. And so no, it's just more of a question of what's the best way to maintain this?
You're absolutely right. So we've always had grass there. Either healthy, good growing sod or where it's at right now, but it is part of our maintenance plan. And what we're trying to figure out now, what is the best way moving forward? We do know the residents of that park do want to see the sod or the grass or some type of greenery come back out there. But at this point is we're just trying to figure out what the best method is moving forward. If we want to just move forward with some artificial turf or put in some sod. So we'll figure that out here in the next meeting and see what the residents also have to say.
So if I may, just on that point of discussion, I appreciate that they pay for that they're very unique, but also with the master plan, we may say like, gee, let's move the playground and make that a dog park. It probably won't happen because it's just, but maybe we plan on moving that small kids playground to another location. Would that then necessitate changes in what you guys are doing from an O&M perspective for the turf? And are we being too fast to do that? But you could say like, now you're thinking, I mean, because there's other gym equipment there on kind of the corner is that northeast corner as well. So there may be discussions on changing things in that park. So are we putting the cart before the horse on planning on doing and having put turf in my own house, maybe doing that too fast? That's all.
And that is a fair, that is a fair question. And at that meeting, that is something that post commission can recommend. No, let's wait and see what the master plan comes up with. Like I said, we're still continuing to maintain it. It's in really good shape. It scored high on the assessment. It's about I believe the area where the sod goes, it's about 1,200 square feet. So it's not a large area. I would hate to throw $26,000 away. If, the residents come back and say, well, it's time to redo this whole park. It's time to upgrade. And we've heard from them in the past that the playground equipment is old. It's time to redo the playground equipment. It's time to upgrade. And in doing so, it could be a total revamp where equipment goes in a different area. So Vice Chair Hornbrook, that is, very good comment that, let's work on this wisely and moving forward. So that would be an option on, next month or in 2 months.
Any other comments, discussion? If not, we will move to action items. All right. We have an action item to nominate a second member to the Parks Master Plan Subcommittee, the major topic of tonight. And that there's a vacancy due to Commissioner Nick Farr's appointment to the Tiburon Town Council. He's the second person on this committee with Commissioner McInerney. So we need a second on the committee. And am I able to go straight to a motion on this?
Yeah, at this time.
I would move to nominate Commissioner Hornbrook for this committee. Do I have a second?
Vice Chair Hornbrook, do you accept that nomination?
Yes. Yes.
I will need a second.
Second.
Okay, I'll take roll call. Chair Judge,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hornbrook,
Yes.
Commissioner McInerney,
Yes.
Commissioner Moon.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner Hornbrook. We are glad for your service on this very important subcommittee, and thanks, Commissioner McInerney, for keeping it going. Probably the most important thing we'll do this year for sure. Okay, the next action item is the Tiburon Municipal Code related to electric mobility devices. This was a topic, a discussion topic in the last post meeting. We discussed a few key points. I presented, there is a subcommittee on this. It's myself and Commissioner Burr, who did send his regrets for tonight. He had childcare and family duties that he couldn't get out of. But we had presented, I think the main summary points were that the Tiburon Code is lacking a definition. It's basically lacking any language around e-mobility devices, including e-bikes. And until it includes language that addresses e-bikes, there can't be any enforcement of e-bikes. That sounds silly, but that is what I hear. So it is our job to update the Tiburon Code to make sure that e-bikes are included in the list of vehicles that are permitted on Old Rail Trail, to include that e-bikes and e-mobility devices. There are clear codes and rules about where they can and can't go, which the town has clear codes and rules about where everything else can and can't go. So the job was, one, define e-mobility bikes, e-mobility devices. What does that category include? And then two, update the code to basically define that and add those devices to the list of vehicles or devices allowed on Old Rail Trail. And there were a couple other things we discussed wanting to see that aren't code related. Like we want it once we update this code, we can actually ask the police department to do more enforcement. That's what this is all about, really, is trying to create safety on the trails, and make sure people are following the laws and the rules. And I think that was it. David, is there anything else you can present on this?
Judge, you're absolutely right. So this right here is an update to our current municipal code to add electric mobility device section to it, beef it up. This right here, talks about the addition of motorized scooters, motorized boards, one-wheel boards, personal assistive mobility devices, electric wheelchairs. So we're allowing all of those to be on the Old Rail Trail right now legally. Well, we're proposing that, and it is the commission's job tonight to look at these additions and recommend these to go to town council for adoption. So the first change that we do have here is section 23-25, use of vehicles on the Old Rail Trail. And item number 10 is the electric personal assistive mobility device, the electrically motorized boards and motorized scooters. These were not included originally in this section. Now, one thing I do want to mention here for the commission to take note is that we're not including class 3 electric bikes on the Old Rail Trail due to the speed. And that is something I want to note here. If the commission at the end of the night is okay with that, we'll continue with just keeping class 1 and class 2 on the Old Rail Trail as they currently are. And then what we did was we added section 23-25A, a subsection, and that is basically a brilliantly written municipal code that our sister city had put together, very comprehensive, that we're adding here. So this is something that we'd like the commission to take note of and provide feedback to the subcommittee and to myself, staff, so that we can then take this proposal over to town council in January for possible adoption.
And a reminder that the town also has new signage that they are planning on installing, so there will be additional signage, right?
Yeah, so the signs that we're going to come back in January are the lollipop signs that Commissioner McInerney had helped bring to fruition. We are coming, we're gonna come to the post with actual permanent decorative wrought iron style signs with permanent bases that we can put the posts in and out easily. The signs won't be the corrugated PVC plastic or, the cardboard that we have now. They'll be nice stainless steel, metal signs. So we're going to come with that plan in January as well for recommendations so we can move forward and get them ordered.
Okay, that'll be another January action item.
Yes.
Okay, a couple more things that I would just add to the presentation. Class 3 e-bikes are not allowed they're really not allowed in any sidewalks, pathways in anyone's code in the state. They are for the roads, pretty much according to every code. And the Old Rail Trail has a speed limit of 15 miles per hour or 10 miles when passing or near pedestrians. So adding e-mobility devices to the list of vehicles permitted on Old Rail Trail doesn't change the fact that they still have to follow the speed limit. In fact, it holds them to that speed limit. So I think those are the only things I'd add. So with that, I think that's the presentation, and we can go to commissioner questions. Any questions about the proposed update to the code? Okay, all right. So no questions from commissioners. What about from the public? Do we have any public questions or comments?
I see none.
Excellent, we're moving. So we can go to commissioner discussion on this before we move on action.
I have just a discussion point on the code change on 25A, whatever that one, C, no operating or riding electric mobility devices on sidewalks and public facilities. Would that address if enforcement is needed by the Reed Union School District to address anybody riding on that trail in the back at Del Mar on the backside of the field there?
That's behind the tennis courts, correct?
Right, yeah.
Okay, that's owned by the school district.
So, but they would like to they'd cite this. I mean, they cite the dog leash laws on their sign, so.
We would just make sure that we'll work with the school district so they can sign it correctly.
Yeah.
And at that point, yeah.
Okay, yeah, they'd appreciate some language on that.
Yeah. We'll help them out on that language, yes.
But it's their property, so it's their
Correct.
rules.
Right,
Correct.
So that's what I told them, but.
Yeah.
Or you maybe reach out to them. Thanks.
Any other comments?
Just seeing under D, the duty to operate number 3. It's recommended that those under 16 should not ride double or tandem. Is that what Mill Valley says?
Yes.
And I do wish Tim was here. I wish he was calling in or something. So he could tell us what the state law is gonna, which state law is coming up or doing whatever. Is that going to also be something that is a state law at some point? I think where it says recommended, that's not a lot of teeth in anything. So I can see that we have it there but I don't see where that's going to get us anywhere.
Doesn't 2 do that for you?
But number 3 is, so I might know a little bit more than others right now because my almost 13-year-old is campaigning to get some freedom with a motorized bike. So there are motorized bikes that only seat one. And then there are motorized bikes that have the bigger cushion in the back that could seat more than one.
Gotcha.
So yes, number 2. So like, for example, I would assume number 2 would be somebody with a scooter, and sometimes you almost see them to like going to India, all these people on one motorcycle, right?
Yes.
Just these kids riding more than one person on a scooter. Scooters really are made just for one.
Right.
Versus some of these bikes are made to hold 2. And not the cargo not the mom dad cargo carrier bikes, more of the rad bike type
Got it.
motorized bikes. But it just doesn't seem, but I'm all for it. I don't want my child riding with more than one person. But that doesn't seem like it's, how do you enforce that? Does the policeman just pull them over and say, this is recommended not to do this?
I wouldn't.
And are parents going to read that and say, it's recommended, but you need to get your friend around somewhere. So even if it's recommended, I'm going to say it's okay.
I have,
More of a comment than I don't think there's a solution. I'm just saying,
I have a quick response to your invocation of Commissioner Burr. He's not here, but he did create a presentation of the legislation that's being considered in the state. And so thankfully I had it handy. This is all his work. But it doesn't look like there's any legislation that addresses that specific question. There is a piece of legislation that would permit class 3 e-bike riders to use approved bicycle paths and trails, bikeways, and bicycle lanes. I think that it seems like that still would be subject to the town's code. So we would have to look at that, I think, if the state passes that, to figure out what we want the town code to do, given that the state has changed that. But that has not passed now, I don't believe. There's a lot of other legislation that touches on this. One is like it's creating a central authority on e-bike safety training and protocol that local governments have or can utilize in communities. We already have some bike training, e-bike and bike training programs already in County of Marin that governments and school systems are utilizing. There's a bunch more, but I'm not seeing that. And of course, he could answer that better, but he did leave his homework with us.
And I do see this as being a fluid document. Every couple of years, we may need to come in here and do some touch up and update.
Any other comments to raise?
Well, David, based on that, on the fluidity, what questions do you think the town council would, you want to bring this to them in January? But
Yes.
we're going to vote on this now.
You're going to vote on yes. So we have only 2 meetings left with town council. One is, this year, there's only 2 left. December 6th, we can't have anything, and the 15th is booked. So it would be the first meeting in January. I believe that the 3rd would have been, but that's canceled because it's right after New Year's Day. So it's, I think, the 15th or 16th. That's why towards the middle of January is when we would be able to go to them.
Is there I guess my question on that is there anything here that I mean, as you presented from staff, you'll say like, this is language that's from Mill Valley's code, we reviewed it. I mean, I'm looking, I wanted to I'm hoping to give, is there anything here that for feedback or just discussion and give everybody time to review this? For it to be like, yep, it's passed in January versus town council going, I don't know, let's wait on this. So I'm done.
We actually, town council does want to see this move forward. We've had a lot of complaints and the police department does want to move forward with something in place to help give them the tools they need to start enforcing.
That's helpful. Thank you.
So my commentary in this would be, given that it seems like the cost of not adopting this code just leaves a real hole for enforcement. Whereas if we adopt this code, we can continue to revisit it if state law changes and if circumstances change, or if we observe safety, problems. So this doesn't close the case forever. We can pick this back up and continue to update the code.
Oh, absolutely.
Or
It's a living-
recommend, obviously, we
recommend.
don't update the code. We recommend that the town council consider updates to the code.
Absolutely. It's a living document, as the electromobility devices change as we move forward, in 20 years, you're going to be talking about hoverboards probably. So
Supposed to have those by now.
I
Thank
guess,
you.
so does adopting this or sending it to town council for adoption, will the police department do more enforcement? Because now this is in the code, or are they gonna be out on, do they have a plan to say, okay, if you change the code and put this into the code, we'll be out on Old Ware Trail more, doing more enforcement because we have the tools now to do it? Because it all comes down, like,
it comes down to
Comes down to
enforcement.
enforcement, so-
Everything comes down to enforcement. I'm gonna venture out and say yes, but they need this in place in order to do it. So time will tell. I think that, they are fully staffed at this point. Spring is around the corner. Once this goes into effect. So I think that we just want to give them all the tools they need to be able to be successful out there. We are seeing, we're just seeing more collisions out there, more issues out there. So we just want to make sure that they have everything they need in order to do their job.
Okay, so with that, we can go to action, correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, I would move to adopt the proposed. Actually, I think the correct language is make a motion to recommend that the town council adopt this proposed language for the code.
second, third,
Roll call I'll take, Chair Judge,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hornbrook,
Yes.
Commissioner McInerney,
yes.
and Commissioner Moon.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, that was the last item on the agenda. So with that, we can adjourn. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, David.